And hello for the final time of tonight. And I say that phrasing because I've recorded all 5 of these variant solution video, or variant 101 solution videos over the course of the past however many hours it's been. Just kind of weaving this in between while working on other things. But the backlog will be done after this. I will be fully caught up on solution videos and will hopefully just get to posting them right as new puzzles get posted at the same time. So, we all know, or at least the assumption is that you all know what this is by now. This is the variant 101 series. And this is back to sort of basics a little bit. Earlier did the crop killer cages, crop dots, and then quiz number 1, which featured both of those. But now we're going back to just having one new rule in the grid. And this isn't, I wouldn't say a new rule for me, but it's kind of a new rule for me to be using intentionally. Personally, when I've been setting all my other kind of more normal size puzzles, I generally just put clues based on what clues make sense to put in, unless I have a specific theme I'm going for. So, like, my first puzzle, Cage by Secret Killer, that was very Cage themed. That was kind of the whole joke and theming of it, so it made sense to use cages there thematically. But there's a lot of other puzzles where I just kind of put things in the grid and just look for interactions that seem cool, and I roll with it from there. And then maybe when I'm looking at, say, like, a quadrant of the grid, like where my cursor is here, maybe based on the digits available, it would make sense to put a white dot, or a cage, or whatever, could go there to resolve what's happening. That's generally my philosophy with setting, and so forcing myself to do exactly one type of rule per puzzle has been a good but interesting challenge, and Renbans are not one I've ever tried to do that for before. So this was actually a little bit tough for me to make, mostly because I'm trying to make it interesting and approachable at the same time, and that's kind of hard to do. You could very easily accidentally make things way too easy or not approachable enough, but I think this strikes a good balance. Might have noticed before that this has a big bold thing saying that I feel the break-in for this is tougher than the break-in for the rest of the series so far, and to increase accessibility, I have included a hint about how to start underneath the image below. Now, that would obviously go well alongside the solution video, but I didn't have this recorded yet, so. And I mentioned if you don't want the hint, just don't look below the image. So I will just verbally do the hint at the start here, once we actually explain what a Renban line even is in the first place. So we have normal Sudoku rules again, as well as dynamic fog, all standard stuff. Renban lines are neat because they are consecutive sequences, but not in the same way as white dots, and that's the big difference here that makes them a little more interesting. There's sort of like two differences. One is that these lines can go diagonal, whereas you will never see a white dot diagonally between, say, like those two spots, whereas a Renban line could do that. The other thing is that, say we have this sequence here. This is 7 long. That's not necessarily just going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, and then maybe like 5, 6, 7, or the other way around. Where if that was the case, we would have 2 4s in the middle on both of these, and we would have the puzzle broken. What matters is not the exact order of how those numbers are laid out. What matters is that overall, this is a consecutive set of numbers. So, for example, this could be the numbers 1 through 7 in some order, or it could be the numbers 2 through 8 in some order, or it could be the numbers 3 through 9 in some order. And as far as Renban logic is concerned, it doesn't particularly care what order you put those digits on the lines, as long as that is the overall sequence, whichever one you determine to be correct. And I tried to communicate that in the rules. A lot of times the rules don't go into this much detail, but I decided to give an example. I said, for example, a 3-cell line could contain the digits 4, 5, 6, arranged as 4, 5, 6, or maybe 5, 6, 4, or maybe 4, 6, 5. There's all sorts of ways you could arrange that. The other thing to emphasize is that it must be a non-repeating consecutive sequence. So in this case, we know that because it's all the same row already. This one is all the same column, so we know that already. But there may be lines later on that appear where maybe a line goes something like this, where it goes across, L shape, and then diagonal down. Even though that covers 3 different boxes of the grid, we cannot repeat numbers on it still. So you cannot have this be, for example, 2, 2, 1, 2. That would not be valid. It would be technically a consecutive sequence, but it would break the non-repetitive part. So, with all that said, I will restart the timer, and I will say that the hint that is underneath the grid, pause now if you don't want to hear that. The hint is, actually I don't remember the exact wording I used, so we'll just tab over to it again. There's only one pair of digits that can go into the corner cells of the top and bottom rows due to the 7-cell Renbans. Then pay attention to how those digits interact with each other and other Renbans. So what that's referring to is these corner cells. That is saying that there's only one set, or one pair of numbers that could fit into, say, these two. Let me do different colors here. Yeah, that is referring to these two down here, and similarly the same thing would apply up here. So the way I say to think of this is, we had 3 cases when I was doing the examples there. This 7-cell Renban could be 1 through 7, or it could be 2 through 8, or it could be 3 through 9. So that is what the lower pencil marks here are, just for the sake of visualizing. And the question to ask yourself is, what numbers are left over not going on the Renban in each of these cases? So if it was 1 through 7, you would have 8, 9 left over. If it was 2 through 8, you would have 1, 9 left over. And if it was 3 through 9, you'd have 1, 2 left over. And so that leaves 1, 2, 8, and 9 collectively as options for these corner cells. Because no matter what kind of order this could be, 1, 2, 8, 9 are the only digits that could go there. And chances are you already see the problem. 9s in both these columns mean these corner cells cannot be 9s ever. And if we look back to this little cheat sheet over here, 2 of these options require having 9s in the corner. We can wipe out all of those, and we can say for sure, just based on it's the only option left, it must be 1 and 2 in the corners. And the rest of the line must be 3 through 9. Which, even though I love pencil marking, I am not going to pencil mark that, because that would be way overkill. So that's cool. We get some initial pencil marks in the corner. I'm going to get rid of the colors now. Just don't need that now. And now we have a pattern where once we know one of these, we know what the others will be, just by Sudoku. And so the next part of the hint was to focus on how these interact with each other, as well as other Renban lines. So we can't see, for example, where this line is going, and we can't see where this line is going. So if it only went to here, we could say that this would be another 1 or 2, and then it would just be a 2-cell line Renban. But we don't know how long this line goes. It might extend over here, it could go on a whole journey and connect somewhere else. Like, theoretically, I think it's possible it could go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You don't really know which way these lines are going to go. So what we need to do instead is think about the columns here. We have a 1, 2 pair in this column now. We have a Renban line sticking out from this 1 or 2. So just by the fact that we have a 1, 2 pair, at minimum this could be 3 and 4. And if that's 3 and 4, you could not have that on the same set Renban's line as a 1. That must be a 2, with being a 2, 3, 4 Renban. And that is going to give us the order of the corners. We can also pencil mark 3, 4 here. And that clears some fog. We could see at the start that there was Renbans coming out of 9s, but again, we couldn't see how long they were, so they weren't really relevant, so to speak. Now they are, because we can see these are 3 cells long, and we know they have a 9, so that has to be 7, 8 with them. And what this does, by Sudoku, is it gives us a really nice 7, 8, 9 triple in the middle of the grid here. We have 7, 8, 9 in the middle there. And the question to think about now is, could this be any of these? And the answer is going to be no, because if you were to put a 9 here, you'd have to have 7, 8 accompanying it. That's not possible, we've already used up 7, 8, 9. So that cannot be a 9. Similar thing happens with 8. You would have to surround it in some way with either 7 and 9s. That's not what oh my god, that's not what I'm typing. 7 and 9, or you could go downwards and go 7 and 6. But either way, you'd have to use a 7, and we've already taken the 7s. So 7 itself must be the center mark here. We cannot include an 8 or a 9 above it, so it must be 6 and 5 that go with it. That, unfortunately, does not give us any fog, so we have to look elsewhere. Now we can go back to those 2 external columns that were being useful, because there's only 3 cells left here. We have a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We need 6, 7, 8 in some order. And a similar symmetry here, we have a 5, 7, 8 needed over here. 7, 8 pairs in this box gives a 5 here. And a 7, 8 pair here gives a 6 here. And that's going to tell us the order of the center box. That reveals a number of more lines, and this is why the fog really comes in handy here. Because this, realistically, nothing is stopping anyone from solving this one with none of the fog here and just starting and doing the same path I had. Except you'd have a little bit of easier times at certain points. Like, as soon as you got the 1 here, you'd immediately be able to put a 2 there, whereas I only just now revealed that. So with that, we can now say that must be a 2 to go with that. Similar here. Now, it might make sense. Look at these Renbans, maybe, because we have a 6 on this. So there's only sort of 2 ways we can make this go. It could go down to 5 and 4, or it could go up to 7 and 8. And you'll notice 7 and 8 can't appear up here, and 7 and 8 can't appear down here either. So this has to be a 4-5-6 Renban in this sort of 6-4-5 order. That leaves us with 1, 2, 3 left over here. It also leaves us with 1, 2, 3 left over in this row. I did not really plan it this way particularly, but when you have a lot of Renbans, you're going to see a lot of this, like 1, 2, 3s in certain areas, 4, 5, 6s in other areas. It's because you tend to clump together digits into these kind of groups of 3 a lot. The next Renban is a little trickier to work out, because we could go 5, 4, 3. We could go 5, 6, 7. Now we can see that neither can have a 7, similar to the other one. 7 and 8 takes that out from there. 7 and 8 takes this out from here. You can also take out a 6 just by Sudoku there. But the important step to think of here is we now know we cannot go up to 5, 6, 7. So we could go up to 5, 6 maybe, which would mean we'd have to have a 4 on it. We could also go 5, 4, 3. So effectively what that does is we took out the highest digit it could have possibly been, which means we now must have at least a 4 on it. It might then include a 6, or it might have a 3. That part's still variable. But either way, there's a 4 on it. Now, we could think about the rest of this box here. We are missing 1, 2, 3, and 4. And the fact that we now know there must be a 4 between these 2 cells means that cannot be a 4. That gives us a couple things here. Gives us a 1, 3 pair. That's going to be a 2. And 1, 3 pair means that must be a 4. And that will now unwind the Renban into this must be 3, which means that must be the 4. That's a 1 and a 2. That's a 3 and a 1. This reveals the beginning of another Renban. That must be 1, or not be 1. Here we're missing a 1 and a 4. And then down here we get a 3 and a 4 there. I need to take a sip of water. So, next Renban line revealed is over here. We actually have a couple things kind of poking out, but again, until you know the length of a Renban, it's really hard to have them be useful. And that's kind of why I'm just completely ignoring these other ones, because we know the line, we know what's going to be on them. There's not really much more to get out of it. But you can see this here is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 cell Renban. And we know there's going to be a 1 on it, and a 4 on it in some way. So this is going to be a 1 through 6 Renban. So somewhere among these, we're going to need a 2, 3, 5, and a 6 in order to complete that sequence. And of those, this must be a 2, and this must be a 3. Those are the only options that they could be. We end up with this little football stand, or football goalpost. So now, I'm trying to think where the natural place to look next would be. When I get stuck sometimes and I'm doing these sort of variant, knowing that it's meant to be approachable types of puzzles, I tend to just kind of go to the clues and do the usual thing I've been doing already and just pencil marking a lot. Even if I don't necessarily know if it's going to lead anywhere, it's sometimes just worth trying and just seeing if there's any sort of sign of, this might be more constrained than I realized or not. So I'm going to try that here. I'm going to type in all the numbers. It can't be 1, 2, 3, or 4. It also can't be 5 or 6 from the row. And believe it or not, it can't be 7 or 8 because we have a pair over here. So despite all that, that actually is a resolvable 9. So that is a case of a hidden single, if you hear that term pop around a lot. Probably would have heard it already if you're coming from kind of classic Sudoku background, but... Actually, no, naked single, I think, technically. I get them mixed up a lot. But placing that 9 tells us the rest of the Renban here, so we know this is now a 2-cell Renban, just like these corner ones. So this must be an 8 to go along with it. Similarly, this one must be a 2 to go along with it. Placing both of those gives us a little bit more info here. I'm going to clean up classic Sudoku before I look at any of those. I have the maybe slight advantage here, being the setter, that I know you kind of have to do some more classic before they're even helpful anyways. Get a 1 and 7. These 4 must be 5, 6, 8, 9. 8 must go here, 5's not there. 6 and 9 up here to go along with this in the column. Might as well ask what these are just to see what happens. 1, 4, 7, and 9. We do get... Yeah, we do get a 4, 7, 9 triple here. So 1 must go there. That tells us all of this. 4, 7, 9 triple means that cannot be 9. And yeah, I think it's time to look at the red bands now, because we've done pretty much everything we can down here. So let's look at the easy, obvious one first. This is a 2, it has to have a 1 or a 3 next to it, and it cannot be a 1. So that must be a 3. That sorts out this. Maybe look at this. I don't remember if this one's doable quite now, but can't have a 2, 3, 4, or 5 on it. Then by extension can't have a 1 on it either. 9's out of that side, so this is 6, 7, 7, 8, or 8, 9. We know it won't be 7, 8, because that would break this cell over here. It would make that impossible. But there's not really a way to show that notation-wise here, because there's just a lot of options here. Can't reduce the pencil mark for that any further, so let's look at this one now. 3-cell Renbans are kind of my worst enemy. I never really know how to approach them, because with at least 2 ones, you can look at, here's what 1 is, what's consecutive to that. But when you start having 3, especially when they bend around a corner like this, and then you have different things seeing different parts of it, like these 2 are seeing a totally different set of digits down here and up here than this one, which is seeing its own column of information and row. I tend to just smash the keyboard, like I've been doing a lot already, and sometimes I'll iterate through the options like this, and see, does 1, 2, 3 work? No, there's no way to do that, because none of those digits can be 1, 2, 3. In this case, I'm just going to put all the remaining digits in, remove the things that don't work, and just sit and kind of look at the results for a second. You can take away certain things, like, you could, in theory, put a 9 on the Renban, but that's never going to work, because you cannot accompany that with an 8 anywhere else on the Renban to go with it. So that's kind of a sort of tier 1 initial strategy to use with these longer Renbans sometimes, is take out the digits that seem extreme, and see if they actually could connect to the rest. We cannot have a 9 anywhere on this. It means that just is a 6, by process of elimination. Which makes that a definite 4. Now this is a 3-cell Renban that is 4, 6, so this must be a 5 to kind of sandwich it. This will allow pretty much everything else to resolve, I imagine, at this point. Now that's 6. We now have a 7, 8 pair in the row. Another kind of alternative way to view the same deduction is that this is now 7, 8, or 8, 9. Either way, there's an 8 on it. That becomes 7. That's another way you could do it. I'm going to do it the first way I spotted, which is 7, 8 pair gives a 9 here, which then, by default, gives an 8 there. We get the same result either way. 7 and 8. That needs to be a 3. That's a 7 or a 9 to match this, and that's going to give us the order of it. That's a 6 or a 4, I believe. These need to be 1, 5, 6, 7. All of these only have one option each. That's 1, 8, 9 with a 9, 1, 8. And there is your introduction to Renban Lines. Again, I was a little worried about the beginning step there being a little tough. I've gotten 2 comments on the post already now. Of people saying that they were basically relatively newcomers to variant Sudoku, which means target audience, and they didn't find it to be too tough. Neither of them needed the hint. They did find it, it's certainly a step you have to do, but they didn't find it bad enough to need the hint. They felt that the given 9s were enough to kind of hint at it, which it was hard for me to tell, because I know that that's why I put them there, but it's so hard to tell from the solver's perspective on, is it obvious that if there's 9s in the corner here, that, there's only one way you can make everything work. I didn't have a good idea of that. I had been debating just doing this as the level 2 Renban puzzle, and then separately make a level 1 easier puzzle, but I honestly actually had a bit of trouble getting this puzzle to even work at all. or not to work, but to get it to resolve in a way that's nice, and I really kind of just don't feel like doing a second Renban-only puzzle right now. So I decided to just settle it with this one, and probably in the next few days, maybe not the weekend, we'll see. I'll try to decide what clue I'll introduce next. Okay, thank you for watching.